himself to hawk his power and position for even greater wealth. And so I've done everything I can, and I'm going to do more. I've still got a little gas in the tank to elevate those voices.
Will the senator yield for a question?
Before I yield, because I just keep wanting to exercise this power that I might have for a little while longer, and exercise it over a man that I have a real chip on my shoulder. He's a senator from Arizona. Yeah, he's been a military fighter pilot. He's been an astronaut, has been out of this world. But what ticks me off, sir, I've said nice things about everybody else, but I'm not saying them about you, sir. Because when I go home to New Jersey and I walk through my airport, I was a Newark mayor, my airport, I see your big bald head up in big picture of you saying New Jersey Hall of Fame, Mark Kelly. Who the heck am I? The senator from Arizona, but yeah, you're right, okay. This great, celebrated military veteran and astronaut who grew up in New Jersey, who went to high school in West Orange, whose parents were cops. And so you have the accolades in my state, and I am proud of that. I'm proud I get to serve with you. I still have the floor, stop trying to speak.
Well,
There's rules in this place. Don't make me think the parliamentarian or the presiding officer. Thank you, sir.
Senator, my apologies. For the big
With that kind of deference, I now will yield for a question while retaining the floor.
My apologies for my giant mug at Newark Airport, where I
overshadowed you literally.
As Senator Booker knows, I did grow up in the state of New Jersey. And growing up in New Jersey, I came from a very working class family. My family didn't have a lot of money. My dad was a cop. He was a union member. From my earliest days of remembering my mom going to work, she started out as a waitress. And I remember those days after working these night shifts at these banquets, how tired she was. She would work some long hours. And then she became a secretary, but she also would work as a waitress at the same time. And this was just to make ends meet. Eventually, my mother decided that she wanted to become a police officer like my dad. But this was New Jersey in the 1970s. And for a woman to become a cop, it was really, really hard. It was practically unprecedented. And my mom had to take a written test and then a physical fitness test. And the physical fitness test, it was designed for men. And part of this test required that my mom climb over this 7-foot 2-inch wall. Now, my mother was all of about 4 feet 13 inches tall. And to help my mom out in passing this test, my dad built a replica of this wall made out of a door between 2 pine trees in our backyard. He didn't tell her he made it an inch higher at 7'3". And I'd watch my mom go out there after dinner every night and try to get over this thing. And initially, she couldn't reach the top. And when she finally could, she would usually just fall off into the dirt. But my mom, she wasn't one to give up. And eventually, she was able to get over this thing. But it took her a long time. But she practiced for months. And when she finally took this test, instead of getting over in the required 9 seconds, she got over in 4.5, much faster than almost all the men. And my mom became one of the first female police officers in northern New Jersey. And she kept that job for a long time until eventually she was injured. And by the way, it was the union that protected her rights after being injured on the job. But I remember how this job changed our lives economically. Both of my parents having good paying union jobs. It meant more money coming in the door, more money for our family, more money to play sports. It was part of what allowed my brother and me to chase our American dream, to serve in the United States Navy and eventually both of us as astronauts at NASA. And we were able to do that because our parents worked hard and they sacrificed for us. And because of the support we had, including some really good public schools. That's harder today for a lot of families, including the school part, by the way. I hear from so many folks in Arizona who feel like they're working harder and harder, and they just are not getting ahead. The cost of groceries and gas and housing, especially housing, makes these folks feel like they're just running in place. It shouldn't be that way. And Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they are making it worse.
Yep.
Trump's terrorists are going to jack up prices on nearly everything that families rely on.
Yep.
Groceries, rent, cars, housing. They're even trying to do away with the Department of Education. Now, how is that going to help kids get a good education? And if they're successful, their plan to gut Medicaid in order to pay for a giant tax cut for rich people, it's going to be even tougher for hardworking Americans, hardworking New Jerseyans and Arizonans to get ahead and achieve their American dream. So as a fellow kid from New Jersey, and I never expected that tax cuts for rich people would potentially kill the American dream of kids all over this country. But it could. And as a kid, you, Senator Booker, growing up in New Jersey, I'm interested to hear what was your American dream and why would these giant tax cuts make that kind of dream harder?
I appreciate the New Jersey Hall of Fame member, the only one in the United States Senate, and I appreciate his question. I appreciate the service of his parents out there every day putting their heart and soul in serving the community in a dangerous job, where you often see people at their worst.
Senator Booker is now,
I said this earlier,
it's 5:34
James
p.m.
Baldwin said children are never good at listening
He's
to their
inside
elders.
of 2 hours
but
from
they never
breaking
fail to
Strom
imitate them.
Thurmond's record.
You are living up to the example your parents set in so many ways. And then you go and pull something off that really makes me jealous is you're one of the guys in the Senate that probably most married up. We're both Jersey boys. We both grew up there in grade schools and high schools. We both know those teachers.
He said he was
that did so
he
much for
married
us.
up.
They
Mark
coached
Kelly
us
married
sports.
up. You know, you marry
They
a
taught
woman that's
us.
better than you're standing.
I'm going back for a funeral for a great man in New Jersey named Ed Kohler this weekend, who was one of the greater influences in my life in high school. And you know how much people invested themselves. I remember learning Little League from a guy that would come back from working at a gas station, a parent of another kid. I still remember his big, thick hands teaching us how to hold the bat. And this guy's working a job at a gas station and rushes home to teach his kid Little League, but treated me, only black kid, like one of his own kids. Special communities, special heritage, special culture that we share. Like this Jersey culture, we got a chip on our shoulders, we're tough, we're strong, we're proud. And a lot of New Jersey's watching. Thousands of letters and emails and phone calls from all over New Jersey. Andy, Kim, and I are hearing from so many people. And they're afraid, they're angry, they're worried. They don't understand why they're going after our Social Security programs, cutting benefits by cutting so many employees and cutting the service people get. They don't understand why they're seeing veterans being laid off from their government jobs. They don't understand why Social Security is being called a Ponzi scheme. The President of the United States is making up lies. They don't understand why veterans and Medicaid and Medicare, there's so many things that are making people worried, and I'm hearing their letters, and they're praying that we stop some of these things, like $880 billion worth of it. And the question is why? Why are we doing this? We're doing this, and they're saying it, is to extend or make permanent the Trump tax cuts. The overwhelming disproportionate benefit went to the wealthiest amongst us and the wealthy corporations. So Trump's economy in the first 72 days is pretty bad because of his reckless, chaotic behavior. Prices are up. Inflation is up. The stock market had its worst quarter in 2-3 years.
Yep.
Consumer confidence is down.
Yep.
And now we're going to see tariffs tomorrow, which are going to further drive up prices.
Revenue in Las Vegas is down 11%.
More chaos.
Gambling.
Trump squandered the progress we were making on the economy. He tanked the market. He jacked up prices. Is it any surprise that Americans are feeling more pessimistic, as I said, with consumer confidence going down? And what's his first major legislative push? This is what we're talking about, my colleague, my friend, my fellow New Jerseyans. His first big legislative push in this body is not to help families.
Social Security.
No plan to lower costs.
Interruptions.
That's what he said he would do. Is his first legislation coming here
Say what?
about lowering costs? No. Is it any relief for seniors? Is it some big idea
Interruption of
like we
benefits.
did to lower prescription drug costs?
that
No,
email
that's
or
not
is
what
that
he's
news?
doing. Is his first
Personal
priority
finance news.
helping our veterans?
Let me see that. So,
No.
on the phone.
What is his first priority?
see.
As I said, it's extending the 2017 Trump tax cuts, a multi-trillion-dollar giveaway
news, right?
that slashed corporate taxes and overwhelmingly
What threatens
benefited the
it?
wealthy and left
What
the
my
middle
mom was
class
talking about,
with
folks,
crumbs.
is
Relative
Social
crumbs.
Security has
He and
never
his allies
missed a
promised
payment.
that the benefits would
Doge
trickle
action
down
threatens
to
interruption
workers.
of
That's what we
benefits,
heard.
ex-agency
Paid
head
for itself
says.
was said.
Not that it's going to happen,
During
let's hope that it
2022, the
doesn't,
Fed
but
and the Joint Committee on
Doge
Taxation
needs to leave
confirmed
Social
the
Security
truth.
alone.
90% of workers, 90%
That's what,
of folk in
that's
our
what we're up
states
against. That's what we're talking about,
saw
folks.
no benefit. Now Trump and his GOP allies want to double down with even bigger tax cuts that will increase the deficit by over $4.5 trillion, the majority of which would go to the wealthiest people. Let me read what the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities and how they describe the plan. Here's a quote of their writings. Following a presidential campaign in which Donald Trump promised to improve the economic circumstances of working families, House Republicans are instead pushing to extend all expiring provisions of the costly 2017 tax law, which are heavily skewed to people with the highest incomes, and add new tax cuts on top of that. The Republican-controlled House passed a budget resolution on February 25th authorizing the $4.5 trillion in tax cuts through 2034.
Well, folks, take a
and
look at
called
this.
on committees to
This
partially
is the Las
offset
Vegas
the
Convention
cost
and
with
Visitors
true
Bureau.
$2 trillion in cuts.
This is visitor volume.
Are they cuts to the wealthiest? No.
Area.
These cuts will inevitably
Look at
hit
this.
programs such as Medicaid and SNAP,
Latest
which help
period.
millions of families afford
This
essential
is a year
needs.
ago.
Extending
Down
the
11.9%.
inspiring tax cuts
A year
for
ago, they had
individuals
3.3
and large
million
estates
visitors.
would double down on the
It's down
flaws.
2.973. That's an
2017 law
11.9% drop right there.
One, giving
that?
benefits, the biggest benefits to the wealthy. Households with income in the top 5% who have incomes over $320,000 would receive roughly half of the benefits. So millionaires above that, billionaires, all together, they would receive roughly half of the benefits. Ballooning the deficit, along with the 2021 and 2023 tax cuts enacted under President Bush, the 2017 law, along with the 2001 and 2003 tax cuts enacted under President Bush, the 2017 law has severely eroded our nation's revenue base. The House budget would compound the damage, adding hundreds of billions of dollars to the deficit each and every year. Extending the 2017 tax cuts would cost $3.6 trillion through 2034. Failing to significantly boost economic growth, workers' earnings, and other benefits would not be seen. The trickle-down benefits that proponents claimed in the 2017 law that they said it would produce never materialized. And the law hasn't come close to paying for itself, as I heard on the Senate floor from my colleagues. They said, oh, this is going to pay for itself. Oh, this is going to pay for itself. Yet the House budget claims that extending the tax cuts would generate trillions in revenue, far more than any independent estimate. As of 2017, an alternative path is available. Congress should work towards creating a fairer federal tax system that raises more revenue from wealthy people and corporations and supports high-value investments that expand opportunity and promote more shared prosperity. During the 2017 debate, Trump administration officials and prominent proponents claimed the tax law would yield broadly shared benefits by boosting economic growth. President Trump's Council of Economic Advisors claimed the centerpiece corporate tax rate cut would very conservatively lead to a $4,000 boost in household income. What a lie. But the research to date has failed to find evidence that the gains from the corporate rate trickle down to most workers. Surprise, surprise, surprise. A study by economists from the Joint Committee on Taxation and the Federal Reserve Board found that workers below the 90th percentile of the firm's income scale, a group whose incomes were below roughly $114,000 in 2016, saw no change in earnings from the tax cut. Proponents claim that the tax cuts would pay for themselves hasn't panned out either. In fact, a study by economists from Harvard, Princeton, the University of Chicago, and the Treasury Department estimate that the law's total corporate tax cuts, the rate cut as well as full expensing for capital investments and international tax charges, reduced revenue by roughly 98 cents for every dollar of tax cuts. Reduced revenue in our country by roughly 98 cents for every dollar of tax cuts, even after accounting for increases in economic activity due to those cuts. Similarly, proponents argued the law's 20% deduction for pass-through businesses, partnerships, S-corps, and sole proprietorships would boost investment and create jobs. Then Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, for example, argued that the deduction would be good for the economy and good for growth. But researchers have found no evidence that it provided any significant boost in economic activity and little evidence that increased investment or broadly benefited workers, other than the owners themselves. Despite the underwhelming performance, the House Republican budget resolution assumes that in enacting a $4.5 trillion in new or extended tax cuts will produce enough additional economic growth to generate an extra $2.6 trillion in revenue through 2035. They think it's going to offset the tax cuts. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget has derided this claim as fantasy math. Noting that it is many times greater than even the most optimistic independent estimate. They lied to us.
Yep.
Or at least just put out really expansive hope in the past. And none of it came true.
Nope.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool the American people twice, but we should not let it happen.
Right.
This idea in this country that if you make the wealthiest more wealthy by giving them more tax cuts and deny services to our veterans, deny health care to our seniors, cut Social Security benefits, cut scientific research, cut programs that protect people's safety and security, that is going to somehow help our nation to prosper as a whole. You're kidding yourselves. We have the evidence. We have the analysis. And this is the crazy thing. As I heard from Chuck Schumer, the Republicans are now trying to hide the true cost of their billionaire tax cuts with accounting gimmicks. The New York Times interviewed budget experts from across the political spectrum to shed light on the Republicans' trickery. And this is the article I want to read. I know some people have questions. I want to read this article because Schumer shook me. So here's the New York Times. The title of the article is "The Budget Trick the GOP Might Use to Make $4 trillion Tax Cuts Look Like They're Free." How much does a tax cut cost? It depends on what you compare it to. Republicans in Congress trying to advance a giant bill that includes $4 trillion in tax cut extensions are considering a novel strategy that would make the extension appear to be free money. The trick, budgeting with the assumption that current policies extended indefinitely into the future, even those with an expiration date like the 2017 tax cuts set to end next year, it's the difference between making the extension appear to cost $4 trillion, which is the true cost, or hiding it and say it costs nothing.
Yep.
Using this, quote, current policy baseline wouldn't change the bill's real effect on our deficits or debt, but it would make it easier to actually make the tax cuts lasting by sidestepping a rule governing budget reconciliation, the process Republicans are using to pass the bill. Yes, this sounds technical. That's why we've enlisted some of our Washington's top budget veterans to explain this maneuver using a metaphor. Across the ideological spectrum, nearly all of the more than 20 experts we heard from disliked changing the baseline that Chuck Schumer just came in here and said the Republicans have already decided that they're going to do it. This is outrageous. But here are the New York Times interviewed across the ideological spectrum, whole bunch of experts from the center, from the right, from the left, and let's hear what they're saying about this gimmick. If budget reconciliation is like taking the express lanes on a highway, there's extra rules and tolls, limited stops, but it gets you where you want to go faster, using a, quote, current policy baseline for taxes is like slapping a fake license plate on your car, says Zach Moeller, director of the economic program at Third Way, which describes itself as a center-left research group. They don't like this gimmick. They think it's fakery. Here's another person using an analogy. It's like taking an expensive week-long vacation and then assuming you can spend an extra $1,000 per day forever since you are no longer staying at the plaza. That's Goldwyn, Senior Vice President and Senior Policy Director for the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a nonpartisan group that tends to be hawkish on deficits. Here's another person, Jessica Riedel, Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute. I've worked with them in the past, a conservative research group, and the chief economist for the former Republican Senator Ron Portman of Ohio. Last year, despite being deeply in debt, I bought a $100,000 sports car. So next year, buying another $100,000 sports car is not irresponsible because I'm merely spending the same amount of money as the year before. And if I purchase only a $70,000 car, then I should be congratulated for reducing my annual spending by $30,000. A conservative think tank is basically calling this a hoax and a lie. Lying to yourself. That if I keep spending the same amount I've kept spending to drive up the costs, then I'm just doing the same thing I've done before, so it's not adding. Well, it is adding. There's no way to not call what the Republicans are trying to do a gimmick that's trying to hide the truth that they're going to add trillions of dollars to the deficits that our children, that our children's children are going to have to pay for. The debt payments alone to service the debt are going to be bigger than any of the programs we think we should be investing in, like science research or education or affordable child care or lowering prescription drug costs or expanding the child tax credit. Things that we know if we invest in, we'll get some returns. But no, what they're investing in is bigger tax cuts for the wealthiest. Conservatives, independents, left-leaning folks all come to the same conclusion. Pretending $4 trillion in tax cuts will cost nothing may not be easy math. Many Republican lawmakers who are concerned about the deficit are well aware that the bill will increase the deficit by a lot. Here's the integrity named Massey, said, I can't vote for this stuff. I'm a budget hawk. I do not want to see increased deficits. He called it what it was. I saw him in an interview say, hey, wait a minute. By your own numbers, Republican colleagues, you're driving up the deficit by trillions of dollars, and you're making the rich richer, and you're leaving future generations more bankrupt. So this article assumes that this was all going to be decided by the Senate parliamentarian who advises legislators on chamber rules. This parliamentarian, I thought, could rule that the current policy baseline isn't allowed, forcing the Republicans to have to make a choice, overruling or replacing my friend, parliamentarian, somebody that on both sides of the aisle we respect. It's very rarely done. I've been here for 13 years. We've had the same parliamentarian. But that doesn't mean the Republicans won't try, this article assumes, and I guess they did try. They found a way around the parliamentarian. They found a way around the rules of the Senate. They found a way around the ideals of reconciliation and the Byrd rule. They are deciding that the way we're going to do this is break the Senate and make up our own rules. This is how they're going to get a bill through that gives $1 trillion of tax cuts to the wealthiest in our country who are doing very well. Let's not hate on other Americans. I celebrate success. God bless you. But you don't need tax cuts, especially not that are going to be given to you on the backs of the poor, on the backs of our elders, on the backs of our children, on the backs of expectant mothers, on the backs of my mom's, your mom's Social Security. What does it say about our values and our priorities to allow that to happen? Who are we, America, if you don't think this is a moral moment where the character of our country is being tested?
Yep.
I tell you, the Senate has stopped crazy gimmicks like this before, but the persuasive power of Democratic senators probably won't be enough. We as a country, like these economists that are Republicans, that are Democrats, that are nonpartisan, who called out this budget gimmickry for what it is, when is it enough? When they came after journalists, when they came after colleges and universities, research and science, when they came after law firms who had the audacity to defend clients or to represent clients that were suing the president, who, God bless America, lost in civil courts, lost in criminal courts. When do you cross your line? We can't let this happen. It's not a right or left moment. It's a right or wrong moment. It's a moral moment in America. I've read Republican after Republican, from Republican governors to Republican mayor groups, from the Cato Institute to the Manhattan Institute to AEI, calling out this budget gimmickry for what it is, and the result will be the same: blowing up our federal deficit to stratospheric, almost unimaginable levels. This is wrong every way you look at it. And if your values are fiscal conservatism, then vote with your integrity and vote against that. If your values are a fiscal hawk and you hate deficits, well, vote against this bill because it violates you. Don't make up some fantasy that this is going to pay for itself. The 2017 tax cuts didn't. And you're going to extend them and say, well, it's going to happen this time.
Minutes,
don't worry about it.
He's 1 hour and 23
It's going to happen
minutes
this
from
time.
breaking the record.
No, it's not.
We'll be back for more. Zenny 62, the Vlog Report with Zenny 62, bookmark zenny report.com.
Here's an article.